see you. Nice to see you. Thank you so much. Hi, Derek. How are you? Welcome back to CCC. Nice to meet you. Going this way. Where is Suzanne?
Good to see you.
Oh, hi. Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Great pleasure to see you. This is what I hear. Good.
Thank you so much for coming to this press conference. It's an honor to have our party leader, Michael Ignatieff, with us here today, along with some of your other members of parliament, Derek Lee, Scott Bryson, and Bob Ray, and we also have Martha Finney, and John McKay. Okay, thank you all. Okay. As you may be aware that our party leader, Michael Ignatieff, has just returned from a trip to China last week. And it offers a good opportunity for Michael Ignatieff to deliver your experience from what he's seen in China, okay, to the media. Okay, so it's our honor to have Michael Ignatieff, okay, to say a few words. Thank you.
I went to Beijing and Shanghai in the company of Susanna Zohar, my wife, the Honorable Scott Bryson, and Ujjal Dosanjh. Scott, our international trade critic, and Ujjal Dosanjh, our defense critic. We were hosted by the International Department of the Party. We had access at the very highest level to officials both of the Foreign Ministry, the International Department, and the Standing Committee of Party Politburo. We had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to lecture at Tsinghua University, which was an unforgettable experience, being with some of the best and brightest in China. My dominant impression there was how open and curious those brilliant young Chinese leaders were to educational opportunities. They all knew about Queens, they all knew about Western, they all knew about Waterloo, they all wanted to go to Canada. And everywhere we went, we were received at the highest level. Here's why. Because every Chinese leader remembered Pierre Trudeau's opening of the relationship 40 years ago, remembered the fact that Jean Chrétien came with Team Canada and went 5 or 6 times. He's personally remembered with great affection. Paul Martin sustained the relationship. There was no question that the highest officials in the country understood the historic role the Liberal Party of Canada has maintained in having both further develop our relationships with China, but also maintain an honest dialogue on the issues where we disagree. But there was a strong sense of friendship and respect for the traditions of the Liberal Party. And I know that Bob Ray has been to China many times. Our foreign affairs critic has led our dialogue with China. We also had the opportunity to see what Canada is doing in China. We met people selling lumber and wood in China. We met people developing educational opportunities. Canada has enormous opportunities to develop the educational market in China, given that there are millions of Chinese seeking not only post-secondary education, but primary and secondary education. This is a place where Dr. Tang has played such a leadership role. So we saw opportunities not just in natural resources, but in the educational sector, in the financial services sector, right across the board. And we talked to the Chinese about trying to get a new kind of global network agreement with China. Instead of dealing with piece by piece, piecemeal, sectoral, trade-based agreements with China, could we get a global agreement that seeks to to capture what's so extraordinary about the relationship between Canada and China. That is, we have hundreds of thousands of Canadians living and working in China. We've got 1.3 million Canadian citizens of Chinese origin here in Canada. There is a network of human relations that link our two countries. How do we sit down at the government level and leverage those networks? Take them to the next level of intensity. And that's the opportunity that we wanted to seize. We had initial discussions with the leadership. They were very receptive to that. They think Canada matters enormously. Canada is not just a partner in one field, which is natural resources. It's a partner right across the spectrum of our relationships. Of course, the issue of human rights arose. I raised it in my lecture at Tsinghua University. I raised it directly with the Chinese leadership. When I talked to a member of the Secretariat at Politburo, we had a long and very interesting and frank discussion about internet censorship. And I made the point to him that the economic progress that Canada has been built on freedom of information and democratic institutions. If they respect our economic success, and they say they do, and they certainly do, they have to understand on what it's built, which are institutions of freedom. And so we had a clear disagreement about that specific issue, which is whether it's practical over the long term to restrict the access of citizens of China to the unfolding, exploding information available to citizens around the world. And this is the kind of frank, direct, respectful discussion that we want to have. I have to say two final remarks, and then I'd be happy to take questions. Everywhere we went, the Chinese leaders we talked to said the relationship went into the deep freeze between 2006 and 2009. For nearly, more than 3 years, because of Mr. Harper's maladroit, highly ideological, often insulting approach to China, the relationship went into the deep freeze. Now we're getting back on the road, but we lost 3 years, and when we lost 3 years, other countries have come up the rail. So we are very anxious to sustain and develop these relationships with China because they're crucial to the jobs, the economic opportunity of this country going forward. It was great to be with Ujjal. It was great to be with Scott. I have to say that this is the first of many visits to China by this party, by all the leaders. I think Scott is going back in September. I'm sure Bob will be going again. We are committed to the Chinese relationship long-term, a relationship built on frankness, directness, blunt, one-on-one speaking, and respect for the differences that are fundamental between our countries, as well as the things that unite us, the common interest. So I'm going to stop there and be happy to take further questions on the relationship, on the party, and on our visit to China. Thank you. Sir.
I guess my first question is about how to talk about human rights in a frank and direct way. Because if you are talking about internet censorship in China or anything else like Liu Xiaobo or any dissidents, it has to be frank, and it has to somehow making the Chinese authorities some kind angry or something. How can you do that, get to that balance, and let them know that, okay, we want to trade with you, but at the same time we want to talk about human rights, and they help each other, or maybe. How do you do that?
Well, all I can say is what we did, which is I raised these issues directly in public at Tsinghua University. I talked about the human rights dialogue between China and the West that's gone on for now a couple of generations. In private discussions, I'll tell you how it came up. The particular leader I was talking to was a member of the Politburo, a very senior figure, said, "We admire your country greatly for its economic success." And I said, "Sir, well, our economic success is based in freedom. It's based in freedom of information." It's based in a tradition of responsible government that goes back 150 years. We achieved responsible government in independence from our colonial masters, and we're deeply proud of it. So it's built on freedom of information, and it's built on responsible government. And I have to say, sir, I went on, that it's going to be very, very difficult to keep the lid on this kettle. The young Chinese that I was meeting at Tsinghua University, I went on, are people who are going to be part of that global network. They're going to go to Waterloo. They're going to go to Queens. They're going to go to Simon Fraser. They're going to work for a Canadian law firm. And they're going to grow up in a world where they expect total and instant access to the information sources of the world in a free and prompt form. And we understand the dilemmas of maintaining stability in China. We respect the differences. We respect the differences of your historical tradition. But if you're asking us, how did we succeed economically? We succeeded because we're a free society. So we have to tell you bluntly, that's how we feel. Well, he listened. The meeting went on for an hour and more. It was frank. Scott was there. It was direct. It was clear. He knew where I stood. I knew where he stood. He explained the Chinese, the importance of stability, the importance of keeping order in China. We respect that. We respect the sovereignty of China. We respect its distinct historical experience. So you can have a direct discussion that is respectful but is also direct.
I'm just curious, what is the feedback from the top leaders from the CCP? As you mentioned, the member of the Politburo, probably top 5 or top 6 CCP leaders. What is the feedback from him regarding to the human rights in China?
Well, I'm not here to repeat their arguments. I think you know them well. The arguments are not without substance. They are that China has had a particular history. It's a very complex, multi-ethnic society. It is a gigantic society. What was remarkable about the Chinese leadership was their relative frankness about the problems that confront them. Keeping the growth machine going, dealing with rural poverty, making sure that development doesn't get unevenly balanced between rural and urban, providing for health care, providing for retirement pensions. At which point, when they mentioned retirement pensions, we said we've got to get Manulife Canada into the market here, right? I mean, there are enormous opportunities for Canada with some of the dilemmas that China faced, and they were actively seeking our help. They looked very carefully at Canada's much admired public health system, because they've got to find a way to provide public health for their population. They're very concerned about retirement security, so they're interested in opening up their insurance markets for Canadian operators, and they respect our skills and knowledge in those areas. So it was that kind of discussion. They were quite frank about what keeps them up at night. We were able to say, here's some things that Canada can contribute. They made it very clear we're a different society. We made it very clear we're a different society. That's how you do it.
Yeah, Mr. Bryson mentioned this issue earlier today, but I also want to hear your opinion. And the CISA director, Mr. Ferden, and he has some speech regarding to like number of parliaments or Chinese community group is controlled by Chinese government, and which makes Chinese community not very happy. So I just want to know your opinion.
Well, I think it's clear. I think Bob has commented on, Scott's commented on. We thought that Mr. Fadden's remarks were unprofessional. But the real issue here is Mr. Harper. When he was in opposition in 2005, he made made allegations about Chinese spying and industrial espionage in Canada. It's obviously something that, he's been making these allegations for some time. And what we find curious, more than curious, is that as the President of China visits this country, the Director of Canada's Security Service, who reports to the Prime Minister, should choose that moment to repeat these allegations, to slur the reputation of provincial politicians, and to make unsubstantiated allegations about a community in Canada who are respected fellow citizens. And I think that's unacceptable. And I think Mr. Harper has to explain, he has to apologize. And if you ask yourself the question, I'd like to be the Prime Minister of the country, if the people decide that's what they want. What would I do in a situation where, as a Prime Minister of Canada, I've got the visit of a President of another country, and my Director of Intelligence chooses, the eve of his arrival, to make an unsubstantiated set of allegations about members of our national community? I would ask for his resignation. So the question is, why is Mr. Harper remaining silent on this? Why is he letting this go on? This is damaging our relations with China, but it's also damaging our relationships between citizens. And so we think it's unacceptable. Let's make sure we get around. We can come back to you once we have
Do you
another.
think that a director of finance should be resign his job?
Yes.
So any other questions?
Sir.
I have two, if it's okay. One, probably read about all this while you're over there, but you took a little bit of a beating in at least two Toronto-based newspapers here. One of them a little worse than the other, and I won't name which one, but you probably already know. In its editorial, it basically sort of said that your visit and some of your wording and speeches was a little bit hypocritical, and then it called on when you were lecturing, I guess, at Harvard, and you basically called out China as a huge abuser of human rights. And one, I'd like your reaction to that. My second question is, the Asia Pacific Foundation came out with a report recently saying that over 60% of Canadians in its survey want the Canadian government to continue to pursue human rights in Asia in a major way. Experts, scholars I've talked to, most of them have said that the respectful dialogue won't really work. They said you have to step right up, boot to boot, face to face, and say, well, what about the repression of Muslim minorities? What about the repression of Rangers, of Falun Gong? What about all that? And that's what they say. You essentially have to go up and draw the line in the sand. And that's that. I guess that's my next question. Did you ask about any of those issues, anything other than internet censorship?
Look, we raised human rights at every point in our discussions. We made it very clear in every conversation we had that we come from a country that is proud of its democratic traditions and proud of its adherence to international human rights standards. I never fly under a false flag. We flew the flag of Canada, the flag of democracy in every meeting. And we were direct. We're also, let's get the context here. We're building on a 40-year relationship that the Liberal Party is proud of. And it's been a relationship always marked by directness. But if you're talking to a friend, and the Chinese are friends, you're direct about the places where you differ, but if you're a good friend, you acknowledge where progress has been made. There's no gap between what I said as a human rights teacher before I went into politics and what I say now. When I was a human rights teacher at Harvard, I made it very clear that one of the most important human rights advances in the last 2 generations anywhere in the world has been the lifting of hundreds of millions of Chinese out of absolute poverty, plus the attainment of enormous amounts of economic freedom for hundreds of millions of middle-class Chinese. We met young people, we met people in their 30s and 40s who were enjoying freedoms that were unimaginable in 1965, unimaginable during the Cultural Revolution, unimaginable till the early 1980s. Nobody wants to pretend that China doesn't have more progress to make, particularly in the the area of minority relations. I've never ducked from those issues in my discussions with Chinese leaders and never will. But you can't have a dialogue unless you see the Chinese situation in a context. And you also, you've got to understand, we stand for our values and rights. This is a very great and ancient civilization that's been around for a very long time. As that great philosopher Aretha Franklin said, it's sometimes a good idea to show some RESPECT. That's also a way to make progress. A couple more, and then I've got
Okay.
one there and one there.
First one, I want to follow up what everybody talking about human rights. You talk human rights with the Chinese. Especially in the light of you talk about Harper's way of talking human rights with China is not successful, and compared to your way to talk human rights with China, what makes you think your way to talk human rights to China is much better than Harper's way? First of all, and secondly, we all suspicious about a possibility to have an election in autumn, in this fall. What are you prepared to do to prepare for the upcoming, if there is an election? How do you prepare for the election? You talk about that you want to be a prime minister. Absolutely, you want to do something a little bit different from the current government. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, 2 very different questions. The first question is, how do you judge the success of the current government's approach to China? The relationship went into the deep freeze for 3 years. I mean, everybody says it. Everybody admits it. So, I mean, we judge their approach by its consequences, and its consequences have not been positive. Now we're on a better track. This is good. How do you judge my approach? What's going to be important is to build on 40 years of a historical relationship by 3 successive liberal prime ministers. They have confidence in this relationship. I'm committed to it. Everybody in my caucus is committed to it. And we want to get productive results. And everywhere I go, the other thing in Canada is to say at every stop, I said this at Board of Trade lunch today, the economic future of our country, Canada, depends on getting this relationship right. Balancing a clear defense of our values against extending this network of human connections that is absolutely crucial to the future of the country. As for election preparations, there's a bus parked out there. It's called the Liberal Express. And we're going to 10 provinces and 3 territories. We're going to big places and small places. We're going to urban Canada to rural Canada. We're going to farmers markets. We're going to Tim Hortons. We're going to truck stops. We're going to road stops. We're going to Legion Halls, where I was a couple of hours ago. And we're spreading a message that there is an alternative, a compassionate, responsible, progressive alternative to the Harper government. And that's what I'm going to do between now and Labor Day with my caucus colleagues.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for coming.
And you. Is that okay?
我今天我要送你一个 supporting 我写了一个
Okay, all right.
And this is 7. Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
That's it.
Yes, you did it first?
Great, thank you. Here we go. Okay, David.